This video is sponsored by Incogni. Do you guys want to know a pet peeve I have? Well, I'll tell you. I hate getting phone calls. I get this very irrational rage when I feel my phone vibrating in my pocket. And recently, I've been living my worst nightmare. I've been getting about 5 calls a day from various numbers. And they keep asking for someone named Steve. Apparently, there's someone named Steve out there who has a number very similar to mine, and he accidentally gave mine to the wrong person, and now I'm suffering for it. Steve, if I ever find you, I swear to God. But luckily, Incogni is here to help. Did you know that countless companies are currently collecting and trading your personal information every day? They can just give your number to whoever they want. But what they don't tell you is that you're allowed to make them delete it. It's just really hard and it takes a long time because they don't want you to do that. But with Incogni, you can set it to automatically request your information to be deleted. So anybody who has your number can buzz off and go bug somebody else. And it's really easy to do. It literally took just a few minutes for me to sign up, and then Incogni automatically started deleting my phone number from all these nasty little freaks. So if you want peace of mind too, you can head over to incogni.com/cosmonaut and use code Cosmonaut to get an exclusive offer of 60% off. In case you missed it, that's incogni.com/cosmonaut and use code Cosmonaut at checkout. Or of course, you can click the link below and take your personal data off the market. Cosmonaut Quickie! Hey guys, sorry I took a little mini break from making videos, but I'm back now. I got 2 picture shows cooking, a new worst superhero movies video, and of course, the end of the year ultimate review for all the Batman movies. But for now, we have one more quickie for the summer. I went ahead and did the Barbenheimer double feature. 2 movies that could not be more different from one another, but just so happened to release on the same day. And since I'm normal, I like to have my main course before my dessert, so I watched Oppenheimer first. Now, I was certainly not nearly as excited for Oppenheimer as I was for Barbie. Firstly, I'm very much a Christopher Nolan criticizer. I'd say hater, but I don't hate his movies, I just hate his style. It's very complicated. Secondly, I tend to not like biopics. Something is always so distracting about watching an Oscar bait movie where all the facts are embellished or just straight up lies. But every once in a while, I watch one that I like. And I'm glad to say that this is one of those cases. Oppenheimer is one of the best movies I've watched this year, full stop. It's shocking to me that a movie that is mostly made up of dudes having meetings about theoretical physics can be so gripping. And this is still a very Nolan-y movie without relying on the qualities that I tend to dislike in his films. For one, I'm not usually a big fan of the editing in his movies. Shot continuity is usually optional, and there are many cases where shots simply don't linger for long enough. But I think in this movie, it kind of works. For the most part. The quicker editing allows for this 3-hour movie to move along at a much faster pace than you would expect. A lot of ground is covered here as we follow Oppenheimer for decades of his life, and it never once dragged. Though I will say there were some distracting cuts that made me a little cranky, but I'm going to save that for the Dark Knight Trilogy review. Anyway, Nolan also likes to mess with time in his movies, and Oppenheimer is no different. The film is laid out to drip feed us information from multiple points in Oppenheimer's life, slowly but expertly giving us the full picture piece by piece. Also, in traditional Nolan fashion, the movie has what feels like a climax, only for the story to continue for another hour. There are very much 2 stories being told in this movie. And the climax of the first story is just an audio-visual masterpiece. It is accentuated with a scene that I can only describe as a beautiful cacophony of suffering. This film also gets very creative with its visuals. Half of the movie is told in black and white, and the other half is told in color, where the color scenes are from Oppenheimer's perspective, so we can see a lot more hallucinations or dream sequences. During the color sequences, we are shown vague imagery that we may have no reference for at that point in the story, only to have these images and scenes revealed at key moments of the narrative. This is also done with sound, and I can say that for the most part, the sound was fantastic. I do think that the mixing was a little bit off, as is the case with many of his films, but I can't deny that the score and sound was overall amazing. Many of the scenes have the score in the background, and sometimes it does drown out the dialogue, which was a little annoying, but a lot of the time the score helps to keep the energy and emotion high in a movie that is, again, mostly people sitting around talking about molecules. And I do love how the film uses sound to unsettle the viewer with explosions, screams, and even just faint dripping water being used at key points to remind us what Oppenheimer's thinking about. Though I will say the thing that surprised me the most in this film were the performances. I didn't expect the performances to be bad, but all the people I loved in this movie are people I didn't know were going to be in it. I think my favorite performance in the film is from Robert Downey Jr., who I did not know was in the film. He really blew me away, and I like that a significant portion of the movie focuses on him. And really, one of the most fun parts of the movie is whenever a new actor shows up for a cameo. This is like the Avengers of white male actors. Everybody you know is in this movie. I would say that overall, I think this film was a pleasant surprise for me. I'll get more into my personal gripes with Nolan this winter, but I gotta say, this is one of his best movies by far. It is a film that has a lot of scenes that I'll be thinking about for a very long time, and I'm looking forward to watching it again one day. 9.5 out of 10. The next movie I saw was one that also surprised me. It surprised me because it wasn't as good as I expected it to be. But I still liked it. Don't freak out on me just yet. Listen, I went into this movie with the exact opposite mindset as when I went into Oppenheimer. Whereas I don't love Nolan as much, I am a big fan of Greta Gerwig's previous films. I love Lady Bird, I love Little Women, I love Margot Robbie, maybe a little too much. So this is the guest bathroom in my house, the Mona Lisa watches you while you shit, and my Margot Robbies watch you while you piss. So I went into Barbie with very high expectations, and while the movie isn't bad by any means, I don't think it's great. It's like, just good. Which isn't a bad thing, but I know people are going to be mad at me for saying, he said Barbie was good, not great. Firstly, visually, the movie is a 10 out of 10. The set design, costuming, effects, everything as far as the presentation goes is perfect. This is one of the most visually creative films of the year. I also love Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling's performances. Robbie gives a surprising amount of depth to the character of Barbie, and Gosling simply steals whatever scene he is in. This is another movie with a lot of cameos and surprise actors, and the movie is silly enough that you can tell everyone had a lot of fun making it, and that energy is very infectious, and overall I can say it is an extremely fun movie. Also, I would say that the strongest draw of this movie is the humor. This is a very funny movie. It has a style of irreverent and stupid humor that you just don't see as often anymore. Of course, humor is very subjective, and there's going to be a lot of people who watch this and say it's cringe. But as someone who embraces the cringe, I had quite a good time here. The premise of the story is also something I didn't know anything about when I went into it, and when the inciting incident happens, I was fully on board. However, I think the movie really loses its focus as it goes on. I found the narrative and the overall script to be very disjointed, and about halfway through the movie, I was really losing interest. I do not think the story was meaty enough to keep me engaged for the entire film. See, I know that a lot of people who can't pleasure their wives are upset because this is a movie about feminism, and as someone who isn't afraid of women, I can say that this kind of movie doesn't bother me. I think it's fun. However, I do wish this movie was a little bit more subtle in relaying its message, because that message is the same message throughout the whole film, and it is a message that is said out loud to Barbie in every scene for the whole second half of the story. This might be a personal thing, but this kind of storytelling bothers me in any story. Just don't like it when the message is repeated out loud over and over and over again. See, there's one scene early on when Barbie's sitting in a park and she's wordlessly taking in the real world for the first time, watching and experiencing all the pain and beauty of being alive, and it's punctuated by an encounter with an elderly woman sitting next to her, and it is the single best moment in the movie. It's the only time the movie doesn't feel the need to blatantly tell the audience what they're trying to convey. This movie is a very unique case where I do like the message of the film, but I don't love how basic and shallow the delivery of that message is. On one hand, I appreciate that this movie's not afraid to say whatever it wants, but I do wish it had a little more to say. And yes, I understand that I am complaining about the fact that the movie about a toy wasn't deep enough for me. But to my credit, the bar was pretty high, okay? While I do think this is Greta Gerwig's weakest movie, she hasn't made that many, and this movie still isn't even bad. It is a visual marvel, the energy is infectious, it's fun and campy, and the humor is on point. Just don't be surprised when a few months from now people act like they hate the movie all of a sudden. It's definitely coming. I can feel it. So I'm going to go ahead and give Barbie a 7.5 out of 10.